our Easter service, we always have this telling of the story and then what the meaning of it is. And we will get to that in a moment. Part of that is resetting and looking forward to new life. And I'm going to lead us through a quiet meditation now, and then a song that Daniel Namod sings that we heard on Friday that helps to speak to that. So I invite you, if you are comfortable, to close your eyes with me and move into a time of silent reflection. On this Easter Sunday, we contemplate change. We contemplate the meaning of moving from an old reality, allowing all of the past to pass away, to pass over, allowing ourselves to move into a time where we're in a tomb, a time where we can re-center, where we can pause, where we can evaluate and recreate. When we do that, we let go of the things that no longer served us. We form anew. And we look forward with excitement to rolling back the stone and moving to a new life. It is our time to reset, our time to evaluate what we want to express in life.
If this is my last song, if this is my final day, if tomorrow I'll be gone, what do I want to say? If this is my last song, if it's my time to go, when my body's moved on, what will I have to show? Oh, but fortune and fame, they scatter to the wind. The things that make a name just don't matter in the end. Is the world a little more peaceful? Oceans and skies a little more blue? Is humankind a little bit wiser about the good that we can do? Does the sun shine a little bit brighter where before there was only rain? If so, then I'm glad I came. If these are my last words for all of the earth to hear, if all that I have ever been is about to disappear, if these are my last words, there's nothing that I need to say. I have only tried humankind a little bit wiser about the good that we can do? Does the sun shine a little bit brighter where before there was only rain? If so, then I'm glad I came. Have I given hope to the hopeless? Has a hungry soul been fed? Has a child stood a little bit taller because of something that I said? Have I left a little kindness? Have I eased a little pain? If so, then I'm glad I came. For that, I'm so glad I came. If this is my last song, what do I leave behind? What do I pass on? If I am out of time.
Isn't that a beautiful song? Can we make the world a little bit brighter? Beautiful reflection for us this Easter Sunday. The Easter story has become, I think, my favorite story out of all of the stories that are in the Bible. It tells the story of Jesus' last week, beginning at Palm Sunday and coming all the way full circle to the resurrection. And I think the reason that it means so much to me is because Jesus' example in these last few days of his life can be used as a guidepost, almost like a metaphor, for how we can navigate absolutely any change in our life. Whether it's a crisis in our family, a personal crisis, a global crisis. The story gives us a guidepost that helps us walk from life through chaos, through dying to what was accepted and normal, and into a place of intentional new life. Let's begin with a quick refresher on the story itself. Holy Week begins on Palm Sunday, where we see Jesus returning to the city of Jerusalem to prepare for Passover. The whole country was descending on Jerusalem at that time because it was expected that people would go to the temple to worship at Passover. And when Jesus came into the city, he came in through a different gate. Then at the same time, the Romans were coming in with police forces to try and make sure that they would manage all the people. Jesus is welcomed with palms as he rides into the city on a donkey. He then goes to the temple and overthrows the temple tables, where there is commerce being done, where people are buying and selling things that will be sacrificed, animals and so on, in preparation for Passover. He also challenges the priests about of their prayers, basically saying that they are doing it by rote and not with actually any consciousness. So on Palm Sunday, he manages to upset a whole bunch of people. Tuesday, he does some more healing, does some more teaching, meets with the priests, the Jewish priests, and they decide that he has to go. 2 days later is preparation for Passover. And Jesus meets with his disciples in an upper room. And they have a final dinner together, what we now call the Last Supper. In that time, Jesus washes the feet of his disciples, reminding us of his humility and his love for all people. And then he expands that with a new commandment that he gives to his disciples, saying, "A new commandment I give to you, that you love one another as I have loved you." He then leaves and goes to the Garden of Gethsemane. And while he is there, he is betrayed by his disciple Judas. He's taken to the court and 3 times tried by both the Jewish court and the Roman court. He is offered, the people are told that he can be freed. It is tradition at Passover to free a prisoner. And the people, instead of choosing Jesus, suggest that the Romans free Barabbas. And so Barabbas goes free and Jesus is then condemned to death. He goes from being a hero to a zero in 3 or 4 days. He is taken along with 2 other criminals and crucified. And while he is crucified, he forgives. He takes care of his mother. He finishes his unfinished business. He says that he is thirsty. He says, my God, why have you forsaken me?" And we never really know why he said that. It is the beginning of Psalm 22. And so I wonder at times whether it was just a way for him to bring comfort to himself, or was he truly feeling despair? Nonetheless, he says, my God, why have you forsaken me?" He also is accompanied by these 2 criminals, and they, along with the people who are the Roman centurions, are jeering at him while he's on the cross, until one of them starts to recognize that that may not be true, and so he turns to the other criminal and says, why are we doing this to this man? He's innocent. We deserve to be here. And as a result of that reformed criminal turns to Jesus and says, "Remember me in paradise." And Jesus says, "You will be with me today in paradise." And when Jesus' work is done, he says, "It is finished." And he dies. Father, into thy hands I commend my spirit. He is taken to the tomb of Joseph of Arimathea and laid to rest there. And on the Sunday morning, when the women come to prepare the body, to anoint the body, they find that the stone has been rolled away after these 3 days. And Jesus is no longer there. And then, as you hear in the reading today, he appears later in the garden, and then later as well, briefly, to his disciples on that day. And that's the story. And whether you believe Jesus literally rose from the dead or not, there is deep meaning in this story. So I would encourage you not to get too hung up if the idea of a literal resurrection is difficult for you. It's okay. Take the teachings from the story. They are the powerful markers and indicators about how we can navigate change. And right now, in this time where we have a global pandemic, where we're all challenged with the greatest change in our lives, it is helpful to have this roadmap. So we start looking at what we can learn from it. Go back to the story. Jesus overturns all that was accepted and considered normal. And haven't we just had that experience in our lives right now? Where everything that we thought mattered is now put into question. It is a reminder that where we were is now overturned. And so we begin our journey into our own Holy Week right now. So we overturn an old habit, an old lifestyle, an old activity or a belief or a situation that faces us and that upends everything in our life. What now? The first thing to recognize is that the status quo resists change. The status quo out there, whether it be our employers, whether it be our family, whatever our circumstances might be, the status quo does not want to change. The status quo quite comfortably likes where things are. Within us, the status quo doesn't like change either. And so even though we know we may want to upend a bad behavior or a habit that no longer serves us, there'll be a part of us that is resistant to that change, even though we know that it's for our own good. And so just be aware of that whenever you're embarking and facing a change. In the 5 stages of grief, they call that denial. We don't want things to change, even as they are changing before our eyes. Change can lead to anxiety. It can lead to uncertainty. That better the devil we know than the devil we don't feeling. And Jesus expressed that in the Garden of Gethsemane when he said, "Take this cup from me. I don't really want to do this. I know where this is going and it's going to be hard. And yet, not my will but higher good that is coming out of this? And can I put that status quo fear in its rightful place so that I allow this new change to happen? The very first thing then is to face the change rather than denying that it's happening. And we've seen this so clearly in how our politicians and healthcare leaders and even ourselves have dealt with this coronavirus pandemic. We're to actually recognize that this is a serious thing and this is happening. It takes a great deal of inner courage to actually get there, because our status quo resists the change. So, when we're facing a challenge, whether we want it, whether we think we want it, whether we know we don't want it, the important first step is to face it and accept that it's coming. The next step is to faith it. There's a saying in the Grand Marigold Hotel movie, I can't remember what the name of it is. Best Exotic Marigold Hotel. There's a scene where a person who is Indian is trying to get people who are from England to stay at his crummy, rundown hotel. And he says this: everything will be okay in the end. If it's not okay, it's not the end. When we are facing a crisis, when we are facing something as large as a pandemic, or whether we are facing something as large as a health scare, or a shift in our relationships, or a job loss, something we don't want to have happen, can we stand on the rock of, this isn't the end of my story? There's a movement where people are getting tattoos that are a semicolon on their arm, not a period. This is a chapter. This is a portion of the story. It is not the end. It is not all of who we are. And then we stand firm in it. Jesus had multiple opportunities to run away. Multiple. He could have run away instead of going to the Garden of Gethsemane. He could have saved himself when Pontius Pilate begged him to save himself. He could have told the priests exactly what they wanted to hear and save himself. But he stood firm in the knowledge that what he needed to do was to go through this path and follow it to its conclusion. We are in that time right now where we have a choice coming up for our politicians particularly. Do we stand firm and continue on the path, or do we take the easy way out? In our private, personal lives, do we not often have that same opportunity where we know that what we need to do is going to be tough, and it would just be easier to take the easy way out? So to stay firm when people are yelling at you and begging you to change, to go back to the status quo. That takes some strength. People who have left abusive relationships will often go back. Eventually, they get to this point where even though the easy way out is to go back to the devil they know, they recognize that what they need to do is move forward despite the uncertainty and anxiety. So we face it, we faith it, we firm it, and then we forgive it. On the cross, Jesus looked down at all of these people who were laughing at him and who had caused him excruciating physical and emotional pain. And he said, "Father, forgive them, for they know not what they do." And think about it for a moment. Had Jesus not been crucified, we would not have a resurrection story. If Jesus had not been crucified, he may very well have just been thrown into jail somewhere, and his whole message might have been completely lost to us today. His message of love, of compassion, of non-resistance, and standing firm in principle might have been completely overlooked had he not had the experience of the crucifixion. And do you think that the people who crucified him for one moment had any idea that what they were doing was actually motivating and inspiring a movement? Had they known that, they wouldn't have done it. They knew not what they were doing. As is said in Genesis about Joseph and his brothers who betrayed him, what man intended for harm, God intended for good. Have we not all had some experiences that at the time were terribly painful? And then we recognize afterwards, when we have the benefit of reflection, that sometimes those painful experiences were the best blessing. The same is true for Judas. Judas, who was the person who was entrusted with the funds for the disciples. He was well loved by Jesus, and he loved Jesus. He also played a vital role in the Easter story. We should be grateful to Judas, because his misguided love is what brought us the movement that we call Christianity. Forgiveness does not excuse behavior. It prevents the behavior from destroying us. And if we can believe that it's truly the idea that everything that happens to us is a semicolon, that it is not all of who we are, that it makes up part of who we are perhaps, but it is an event that we are going through, then we recognize that there is nothing to forgive, because the story isn't over. Then the next thing we want to do is finish our unfinished business. Part of the reason I think that people regress when they are encountering and trying to make a new change is that they don't put the past pieces away where they belong. Jesus, by asking his mother to go and be with his disciple John, the disciple whom he loved, we assume it was John, and asking the disciple who he loved to take care of his mother, to me that's an indication that Jesus needed to put his affairs in order. That part of him being at peace with the new change that was happening was being able to rest in the knowledge that there was nothing left undone. In 12-step programs, they call that making amends. There's a song, Say It Now. Say it now. Whatever you might have to say to someone, now is a good time to do that, whether it's a thank you, an apology, a clearing of the air. Whatever it might be that you need to do to finish unfinished business, now is that time to do it in love and in forgiveness and in faith. And then we feel it. Jesus on the cross said, I thirst. I am thirsty. I am. And we don't know if he actually drank or not from what was offered to him. The gospel accounts don't make it clear. In some cases they say he refused the vinegar bitter taste, and in other cases it doesn't say that. But what we do know is that that is a human experience coming out and becoming visible. Too often we want to keep a stoic, straight face. If we cry and feel sad, we say, I'm sorry. Why? Why would we be sorry right now to be sad? People are dying all around us. I hurt. I'm sad. These are powerful, powerful affirmations about what's going on in our human experience. And they are a necessary part of being in touch with who we are in our wholeness, in our humanity. So I encourage you to feel the feelings that you are feeling right now. Go into a shower, and if you need to, cry. The shower is a good spot because with all of that noise, you can do so if it's uncomfortable for you to do it in a public way. It can be private and hidden, and those emotions can come out. Feel your feelings. They deserve you and your attention. And then the last step before this dying away is this step of surrendering. This step of, into your hands I commend my spirit. It is not a fight. It is a trusting acceptance that we are walking a path. And so we allow the old to fade away. We allow it all to die. And now we are in the tomb. And literally now, We are in this place where we are housebound, where we aren't able to go about the daily busy, busy, busy that we used to do. And it is our time now to choose what we want to take with us into what we know is coming, which is a new life. Do we take the thief on the right-hand side that taunts us and wants us to stay back? Or do we, like Jesus, give that thief absolutely no attention at all, and instead welcome the other thief? The thief that reforms, that recognizes that there is wisdom and wants to come along because of that. We take that with us into our tomb. And now we're all in this tomb comprehensively together, but each of us individually. And what is it that we want to form? Every year I talk about the butterfly, and I give a little science lesson about the butterfly and how the butterfly starts out as a caterpillar. And within that caterpillar are imaginal cells. Cells that the caterpillar has no use for and no awareness of that we know in its form as a caterpillar. And as the caterpillar comes to the end of its life, it weaves a cocoon. And in that cocoon, the caterpillar starts to die. And these imaginal cells start to feed and eat away at the caterpillar. And at first, it doesn't make a big difference. And then it starts to feed on itself, and the imaginal cells take over. And the imaginal cells replicate and become wings, and replicate and become other parts of what emerges out of the cocoon into a beautiful butterfly. We have within us the imaginal cells to reform all that we consider ugly, all that we consider unpleasant, all that we consider out of oneness. And now, in this time of the tomb for us, in our cocoons, we have the opportunity to reset. We have the opportunity to choose what we want to emerge with. And in this creative experience that we're in right now, are we not finding some amazing gifts? We are discovering the beauty of technology, not just the yuckiness of it. We're discovering that we're able to tap into more wisdom than we know. We're getting people to understand things that they never believed that they could understand, including how to get onto the internet. We're seeing medical appointments happening by phone, intelligently. We're seeing families coming together and having meals together and getting creative and creating the most amazing little stories and dances. And I heard, I'm trying to remember if I even saw it, a cartoon where a person is talking about, from the future now, talking about these times. And the mother saying, oh, those were terrible times. And the child saying, I remember that. That's when we ate dinner together as a family. That's when we played games. That was the best time of my life. It is in this place of the tomb that we can now take a breath and pause and discern, what is it that we want to emerge when the stone rolls away? My greatest hope is that we emerge wiser, more intentional, more enlightened, more aware of our connection with each other, more committed to taking care of the things that we've discovered aren't working. Healthcare systems that might not treat people the same. Socioeconomic issues that are coming to the forefront now that we would never see otherwise. This tomb is a gift. And then we move from this tomb to our new resurrection, to our new life, to a greater expression of what we thought we could be. Jesus taught us how to move through that, how to move from normal through fear, through take this away, through I'm going to stand and do it anyway, through forgiving them, through finishing, through saying what our feelings are, through intending what we want to take with us. What do we want to carry with us into paradise? And now we're in that place where we are waiting to emerge. Let us use this time wisely. And through it all, he gave thanks. He gave thanks at the Passover meal. You heard in the passage earlier today that when he was resurrected and having a meal, that he gave thanks. This is not the end. It is the tomb. It is the place where we create new life. And that is the promise of Easter. Happy resurrection to you. Stay well.